You're listening to All About Girls of Color podcast, a space dedicated to creating environments that allow girls to thrive. We explore issues and solutions that focus on removing obstacles so the natural joy and genius of girls can bloom. Join us as we dive into conversations all about girls of color and the women they become.
I'm Tanisa Kunright, the founder and executive director of Detour Empowers and the Fancy Teen Girls Leadership Academy.
I'm Gabriela Delgado, an educator and principal consultant for Saving Our Starfish.
And I'm Janedra Sykes, an equity, diversity, and inclusion certified organizational development coach and consultant and a partner in Arboreta Group.
Disclaimer. Our intention is to bring our whole selves to the conversations by bringing our professional and personal selves to each episode. Any views or opinions on the podcast are personal and belong solely to the creators and do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations that the creators may or may not have been associated with in a professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated.
Before we jump into this episode, we want to let you know that our recording included an incorrect title for our guest, Margarita Holguin. Her correct title is Founding Chair of the San Diego County Promotores Coalition and the founder and president of Consulting Solutions, LLC. Enjoy the episode. Welcome back to another episode of All About Girls of Color. We have a wonderful guest with us today, Margarita Holguin, who has done some tremendous work in the community, but Janedra has the pleasure of giving us a little bit of Margarita's bio, and then we'll jump into our amazing conversation with you, Margarita.
Okay, great. You know, I am just so excited about this conversation. Margarita is the founder and CEO of Consulting Solutions, and she's also the co-founder, the founder and the co-chair of the San Diego County Promotores Coalition. And how I know her is that my firm, Arboreta Group, our team, just completed a curriculum that's based upon Margarita's work and her training. She's considered a subject matter expert in San Diego County on this particular subject, community health workers. And I remember, like, early in our relationship, we were talking about how the curriculum would be written and stuff, and I just said to her, all right, just do a brain dump. Just put everything down, you know, in some PowerPoints, and, you know, we'll figure it out. 100 pages later.
You said a brain dump.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I was like, all right, this woman knows her stuff. So our challenge was to do respect to her work because obviously she had a deep-seated love for her community and for the promotores and the community health workers in San Diego and beyond. And she was such a stickler for best practices and research-based and all this, which I love. So it was an honor to work with you, you know, on that project, and I hope we did. We were respectful of your work and your expertise and your history in here around the issue. But so I wanted to have this conversation today to talk to you about your passion. We know that women of color have poor health outcomes, and we serve girls of color, and we think it's important to get that health piece, access, good habits, all of that health education, getting it into the youth as well as the adults, so we can live longer. Mm-hmm. And have more satisfying lives. So I just want to say welcome. I'm excited that you're here. And, you know, tell us a little bit about how you got started and what motivates you.
Great. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. And thank you for all the work that you did with the curriculum and putting it into something that made sense. So as noted, my name is Margarita Holguin, and where is my passion? So I give you a little bit of background. I was born in Mexico. I was born across the border in Mexicali and came to the United States when I was 10 years old. And I'm the youngest of my siblings. And so when we came, we had really nothing. We didn't have anything established. So we moved into the projects in San Bernardino, California, in one of the cities that had the highest crime rate for many, many years. And when I think of being afraid, of being scared, I go back to when I lived in the projects and the experiences I had there. So I always felt like I grew up watching and being scared and not understanding a lot of what was really happening. I remember the times in school when I was laughed at or made fun of because I couldn't speak English or because I pronounced it wrong. It still happens once in a while, but not as much. And so growing up with being on welfare and having, my parents couldn't speak English. They couldn't even read or write in Spanish or English. So just all those challenges and the things that I saw happening always gave me a desire to do something different. But I didn't. Initially, I ran away from home when I was 17. I was pregnant. I just did all the wrong things, dropped out of school, all those things. But then, I kind of had the vision of wanting to do something better. So little by little, all those things were corrected or, something happened with that. I'm still married to the guy I ran away with at 17. He's still being punished for that. But when I started to work in social services, which was the field that I chose, I always felt like I wanted to do something. I especially wanted to help women because I always felt like if I had known my value, if I had known my possibilities. I went to college as an adult. I went back once I had my children and went back and got a degree from Azusa Pacific and then from National University. I was never able to be in that mainstream because of all the choices that I made. And it truly felt that it was the best choices I could make based on the information I knew to be true. Yeah. And in my work in social services and the family resource centers and in community, I think people make those choices based on their knowledge and their situation. It's not a conscious choice to drop a job or to lose your house or be in debt. That's not we don't choose to go out and do that. We do it based on our circumstances. So if we can help have people be in better circumstances, be more informed, have options. The educational system, I'm sorry, but it's so difficult to navigate. Yeah. I remember when I went to City College and here in San Diego, and I didn't understand. What do you mean? How do you take a class? What do you do? How do you know how to get to a degree? It was just so complicated. And so I always feel that our systems are not set up to reach the people that we want to reach. And that's why I fell in love with the community health worker promotores model about 15 years ago when I left the county of San Diego and I went to work for a community organization in the Chula Vista Elementary School District. And it just opened my eyes to so much. And I tell all my promotoras, I'm in love with the promotor model because it is a model that reaches the community. It's a peer education model. It gets to the community that actually really needs it. So, I keep talking and I can continue to talk because this is so such a passion for me. I think that the community health worker model is the answer to health disparities. Yeah. We know that health disparities are there. We continue to have them. We have the highest chronic disease levels in the world, and we spend about 17% of our national product on health care, but yet we still have those outcomes. Yeah. And we continue to see life expectancy decrease. But if a lot of it starts early on and we kind of miss the mark on that, we can do that from now on. But for older adults with chronic disease, there's just so much out there. And then changing the norms for people growing up. When I was growing up, nobody said you're supposed to do exercise. You're supposed to eat 5 fruits and vegetables. We had a soda for every meal.
Yeah.
We couldn't afford food, but we certainly had a soda at the table. And when my dad would buy me a treat, it was a soda and a chocolate bar. Those
Yeah.
are the treats I always remember my dad would,
Yeah.
whenever he had a few pesos to spend.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, I'm in love. I'm in love with the promotora model, community health worker model, too. And what I think is so powerful about it is the representation, is that peer-to-peer communication, you know, and it kind of stems back from, you know, my early days in community organizing, where you had to go out into the field and you had to identify the leadership in the group. And very often it wasn't the person with the title or the job, it was the little old lady in the back that was listening, and nothing happened in the community unless she nodded yes or no, right? So I kind of feel that that's alive in the community health worker model. So how do you find them? How do these women come to you? How do you identify them?
My experience is mostly with the Latino community, although the community health worker and promotores model is a peer education model. So I have trained people in various groups, and it's really intended to have people within different cultures reach the people within their own culture. When you think of listening to someone, it has to be someone that doesn't have to be, but it's better when it's someone who looks like me and talks like me and understands me. Yeah. If someone's going to come and talk to me about parenting or about health, I want to feel a connection to that person. I want to feel that they have some credibility, right? So the peer education, the promotores model, it represents their community. So that in itself increases access, increases those opportunities. When you have the community health workers are trained in core competencies that we have, and their job is to go out into the community and find the people that are not connected. I always tell my promotoras, if we have a great program, let's say a vaccine program, and we put a flyer out and say, we have this vaccine program, and everyone comes and gets the vaccines, then we don't need promotoras, right? Because everybody's going to come. But those people that are going to say, oh, vaccines, I wonder what that's about. Oh, I wonder if it's free. I wonder what they're going to ask. I wonder all these barriers that come up. Those are the people we want to reach, to have those conversations, to break down those barriers, to discuss what's really happening. When the doctor says you need to walk 3 times a day for an hour, or you need to eat 5 fruits and vegetables and lean meats. Okay, that person may say, okay, because you're an authority, and they're going to say that. But when they go home, they're not safe in their neighborhood. They're not going to be able to walk. They may not have a car to go to a different neighborhood. They may also, when you think about how much a lean meat costs right now compared to a $5 pizza, it's just not possible. But they're sometimes embarrassed, or in the Latino culture, you respect authority. You don't speak back. You don't say no to a doctor. They're the doctor. They're the ones that know. So you just say yes, and then you just don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important what you said, the hard to reach people in the community. And I think what happens often is that people will put these programs into place and expect, folks to just show up to participate in the program or show up to do whatever the thing is. And then when they have a low turnout, they assume, oh, well, they weren't interested, or, oh, they didn't want to do it, or they weren't motivated, right? I see that a lot. Oh, they just weren't motivated. But it's not that. I think that why I love the model is because you give those people access to the program, one, and then you're actually able to hear and validate their concerns, because that's important, right? So, it's not that they're unmotivated or not interested. It's just that they have additional reservations that they need, to talk to. They need to talk to someone they trust about it before they feel
safe.
And that's overlooked.
And I also think there's a respect thing that sometimes is missing. I worked on another project, not yours, but, it was really frustrating for me because, the subject matter expert was not of the community. They were coming into the Black community to deal with a chronic illness, and their solution for it was, we need to teach teach these people how to eat and how to cook. And I just thought that was just so incredibly arrogant.
Yeah.
You know, like we need to teach them how to.
Our way of life.
Right.
That's what that sounds like.
Right.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And I come from a culture of chefs and cooking, and, you know, and greens are not something new to us, right? But that kind of like patriarchal set up based upon what is considered healthy by mainstream culture, I think shuts a lot of people off.
I agree.
Yeah.
Rather than truly understanding those communities and those the culture and the traditions and trying to figure out how do we help you cook your meals and the food that you like in a healthier way. What can we change? What substitutions? What can we do? And I think we do that in so much. I have several programs to reach out and say, we have a program and we need the community's voice. So can you help us? Okay, tell me about it.
Yeah.
And so, for example, they'll say, so we have a survey that we can email to everyone.
Right.
And they can print it out and sign it and scan it and send it back. I'm like, that's not
gonna
going to work.
happen.
Yeah. So it's like if you're saying you want to reach the community, but your systems are not set up to really reach the community. And I think that's what we have in a lot of places, just the systems are one thing and we don't want to change them. We say the right words, but we don't have the systems to really back that up.
And Margarita, could you walk us through what does that look like in a practical, everyday level when they are activated and they're working in the community? I'd love to just hear and learn more about what does it actually look like?
So I'm going to give you an example. We had this program where a site opened up vaccine sites, and they would go to local places and set up in the parking lot. And they had a tent and vaccines and da-da-da-da. And there wasn't a whole lot of turnout. So they called and said, we need help. We need promotoras to come and talk to people about them. So the site was in the parking lot, and my promotoras were in the sidewalk because we would see people walk by and kind of look and kind of check it out and continue walking. So when I put two promotoras there on the sidewalk and saying we have vaccines, this is what we have, and offering whatever service was available, the partners that we had to come and say, stop. We have too many people. We can't take any more today.
Yeah.
So that was the exact difference. When you're there where they are, the community has to be reached where they are.
Right.
On the sidewalk, not expect that they walk up and go into a building or somewhere. Right? You have to first reach them where they are and then see what they need. Are you interested in vaccines? Yes, no. Maybe there's something else. The one thing that we find with promotoras is that once you open the door, they'll tell you everything else that they need. Well, by the way, I need this and this and since you're here. Since you're here, since you're helpful.
Right.
And so we always want to equip our promotoras and have them be backed up by the systems that really they can connect the community. It's not in a silo. You can never go out and just know by your one program. And that's the beauty of promotoras. They're always very knowledgeable. We do a lot of training and a lot of giving them the resources because families will ask. If you're able to develop a trust and relationship with them, which is the number one key of a promotora, building that relationship, they will tell you what's going on and what else they need.
Is the model primarily used in the healthcare field, or have you seen that the model is used in different industry sectors as well?
It is used in different sectors.
Okay.
It is primarily in the healthcare sector with the community health worker model. Okay. The promotora model is a bit more community-based. I see it used in schools quite a bit. When I had the family resource centers that were school-based, we used the promotora model quite a bit, and it helped connect the parents at the schools that you already have them there and would bring in programming through the schools and having a lot of the community connections. We know that social determinants of health is what is impacting the health of the population, right? And health disparities. So really addressing those social determinants of health, those conditions in which people live and work and are born, that's how we really impact health. So when the promotores are there in that community, can actually go to someone's home and see what's going on. Is it the living conditions? Is it the people you're living with? What are the barriers? That's when we're really addressing social determinants of health. It's not in the clinical setting.
How do you find promotores? How do you recruit them? How do you retain them?
Oh, they are just amazing. So in Chula Vista, when I had the family resource centers, a lot of our promotores were referred by the family resource centers. This was a mom who was volunteering at the school and would stop by the family resource center for some resources. And we could see that drive. And so the staff at the centers would say, hey, we have this program, and come over and learn about it. And then we also had those that were clients at one point, because the promotores are from the community and reflect the community, which means that they may have the same challenges as the community we're dealing with. That's why they're able to understand. That's why I understand when someone doesn't speak English and I know how they feel, or when someone is an immigrant and comes to this country. This is a whole different country. And so because we have those experiences. So in most programs, we look for people who have like experiences, or who have family members who've had like experiences, because you're better able to connect. And a lot of them, we always say that it's a passion. It's in your heart to want to do this kind of work. So we have a great network of a few hundred community health workers, and through the San Diego County Promotores Coalition, we try to have kind of a listing of all of them, so we can connect them to services and make sure that they have resources and that there's a linkage and a networking opportunity for them. As Janedra said, I was the founding chair and was the co-chair for many years until recently, about a few months ago. I stepped down from that role, but continue to engage with the coalition.
I have so many questions, and I don't want to
go ahead.
I'm so curious and want to learn more. I'm wondering, is there a pattern or trends that you've seen with the promotoras themselves? I know they're making impact with families, but I'm also wondering, have you been able to capture the impact that the role has had on them as being that point of contact for the community?
Oh, yeah. Thank you for asking that question. Yes. So when we see a promotora begin, we see this shyness, this desire to help, but very, little by little, and not really understanding their role. And as we engage them and they see the value, and we have different programs. In Chula Vista, for example, we had a group of volunteer promotoras, and they decided to do some fundraising and do some events. So they would set up this yard or parking lot sale and make up a little bit of money, because they would sell spaces. And then they wanted we would find senior housing, and we would go do a Christmas party for them, or Dia de las Madres, Mother's Day event at different places. And I would see them, the energy, how they felt so good about giving back and about actually taking action and doing something. A lot of them decide, I want to get a job. I want to do this. Or we've had some that we have them make goals. So what are some of your goals? Someone's like, I'm going to be a U.S. citizen, or I'm going to go back to school. We see so much of that. It truly is beautiful. It just, the feeling that you get when you feel like you're making a difference and you're helping others gives you the confidence to know, I can do this, and I have skills, and I can do things, and we have seen that with them. I was telling them, if I did it, you can do it. Anybody can do it.
So when...
Oh, so I was going to say, the role modeling, I'm thinking of the work you do with girls, right? Like what that does for the mom and the daughters, that then now those young women are seeing, well, my mom's an advocate, and she's a shaker and a mover in the community, and how you've inadvertently planted that seed also with the younger
generation. The exposure, right. And then I was going to ask, what do you typically see as their next step? Like, do they want to go into medical, the medical industry, or do they want to do more community work, or where do they normally land?
That's a very good question because I truly do see both. In my experience, I see some of the younger people coming in more willing to go into more of the health field because it's a little bit longer way to get there. And I have seen them start and get promoted and advance. And I have several that I just feel so proud of all the work that they've done. Others, and especially those that are older, sometimes they don't have as much flexibility on their time, and they just want to be able to do a little bit when they're able to. So they tend to stay more in the community-based model in that field. But it truly is something that is open. This is a model that has really taken off, and we need promotores in all fields. We see recruitment for promotores everywhere. And I do think that it is a great career. It is an established labor code for community health workers. So, and now with new legislation, we will be able to get reimbursement for some of the work that is being done by community health workers in the health field.
Awesome.
That is new.
Yeah.
So that's interesting because it brings me to when we're working on your curriculum, that we came across that research that asked promotores what do they want, right, as far as from a workforce piece. Because my assumption was that, they would want to be a nurse and they would want to be a doctor. And that the research didn't bring that back. What they wanted to do was to expand their role and to have more opportunity within their established role. Do you find that that's true, and that the sector's kind of moving that way?
I do think that is true because with a promotora, when you say to them, okay, you are working on a breast cancer program, so go out and help people get their breast cancer information and their testing and all those mammograms. They go out there, but as I mentioned before, that mom or that woman is going to say, but I'm also having issues with my son who's in high school or my husband or this. And so the promotora wants to help with all of that. So they want to be able to have a larger scope of the work that they do because it's more holistic. Because you are told to go build a relationship. And if you don't, you can't help them. Bringing up breast cancer, I remember we were at an event and I was at a table with a few of my promotoras. And one of the promotoras sees this woman walk by our table and kind of look. And we had models on the table and that. And she came like about 2 or 3 times and walked by and was just looking. And the promotora says to me, something's going on, this woman, the way she's looking at our table. And I said, well, and she says, yes, I'm going to go talk to her. So she kind of follows her and starts talking and builds a relationship. As I always tell the promotoras, they have to like you to hear you. Okay. So build relationship, talk about the weather, talk about whatever, build relationship. Well, not to make a story too long, this woman said, well, my breast looks like that one.
Wow.
And that was one of the models that had breast cancer. And so we immediately set her up for a mammogram, and unfortunately it did come back positive, but she was able to get that help. And had that promotora not noticed and not made the effort to go walk, how many times... And I do this. I walk through a health fair and I look and see where are people standing.
Who has a free candy?
Where are they standing and are they out there to get me or they're just there because they're there? And so when it's a promotora, they're in the front of the table and they're talking to people walking by, not sitting in the back on the phone or whatever. So that's the beauty of those promotoras. They can feel it, they can see it, and they're open to that community.
Yeah, and they see you as a whole person. Not just, Kaiser, you're in there 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's too long for them.
And 13 of those minutes are between the doctor and the computer.
Right. Right. So it's like, it's done in silos, which is just crazy because there are other things going on in our lives that are impacting our health.
Oh, the body-mind connection, and the whole stress thing. As it's connected to chronic illness. This is so true for communities of color.
Now, because they are working with folks who are maybe experiencing some of those chronic illnesses, Is there some embedded training and support for them? Because I'm thinking they're going in the home, they might then connect people and then see them in the community just for that own trauma that can come with doing the work. Is that something that's part of the program for them?
So the community health worker model is an established model, and since 1998, we've had core competencies that were updated in 2016. So in 2009, I started the first San Diego County Promotores Academy. That was a 2-day training that taught on the core competencies, because at that point,
That's 100 pages that we have. Plus. What was that? I didn't know about the TF.
we noticed that a lot of people would come in, and I remember the Red Cross was one of the first to approach me, and Alzheimer's Association and all of those would come to us and say, we need you to help get the information out to the community. And they were great at training us about their program, about what the program was and how it worked. But who was teaching the promotores how to get out there? Not know about the program, but how to talk to people, how to reach schools, how to write connections, how to present, all those things. So that's when I had that idea, and I began the first academy that taught the core competencies. So since 2009, I have been training and consulting in the community health worker model, and that's why I was very lucky to get the opportunity to work with Janedra and Arboreta Group and Vista Community Clinic and develop the county-wide training that is a 50-hour curriculum.
Yeah, that was the thing. But some of the core competencies, maybe you want to speak to that a bit. Like one of the core competencies is ability to do outreach, right?
Ability to do outreach. And ability to connect with people, communication, and building that interaction. It's also capacity building. How do you work with the communities to do that? It includes your adult learning and presentation skills. How do you teach adults? Because you're talking to adults. You're not. It's a different model. It's also, a lot of the professional skills and understanding, because a lot of the people we hire are community-based people who have never really had a formal job, and so understanding all those regulations and how it functions there. We see more and more promotores and community health workers involved in research and clinical trials, and so there's a lot of rules and regulations around that. So really equipping them with the core skills that are needed to then do the work of the programs, that the programs, again, train us on what they need done. But the how is what this training is intended to connect with.
Yeah.
How critical was their role during the pandemic?
Extremely critical. And we were given the description of being where we got the vaccines first.
Oh, okay.
Like
What is
first
that?
responders?
The pilot?
First responders. Because we needed to still be out there in the community, and we couldn't stop. We couldn't just shut down because this is when people needed to come in, and it was challenging. It was very challenging. I know that a lot of promotoras worked the convention center, for example, when the refugees were coming in, and we had a lot of
thousands.
A lot of promotores were there helping out, and so promotores are an extension of all these different systems. And when the doctor only has those 15 minutes and 13 of them with the computer, 2 with the client, then the promotores can come in and do the rest. Did you understand what that was said? Did you understand the instructions? How can I help you with this? How can we make sure you get your prescription? All these other different things that are outside of those settings, of the formal settings.
Yeah. Wow. So since we are on the All About Girls of Color podcast, can you speak to just what you see with girls of color?
A few years ago, we started a group of teen promotores. We called it TPAC. So my adult group was called PAC, Promotores Active for Community. And so the youth group, we called it TPAC, Team Promotores Active for Community. And we're recruited from amongst our promotores, their kids or their friends at the high school. And we thought, okay, well, we're going to get these kids and we're going to go out and do community projects. And we're cleaning parks, and we wanted to do all these things. And I had a volunteer promotora who was running it. But I think for her, both of us, we were surprised of how those kids were in such need that we needed to address that first. Rather than go take them out to do projects. We found that and these were brown and black kids who would, little by little, as we built that relationship with them, start sharing about what was going on and what they needed. And it was overwhelming because I had not set up the program to have staffing to support it. And because we thought we're just going to go out and do all these
have
projects.
a bunch of fun.
We're going to take them to the game.
Right.
And so we learned that if you give them the space, they will share, but you have to be ready to address what's going on because there's so much going on.
Right.
And I have a lot of experience with the high schools and middle schools, and they had to refer kids to us and the types of situations, and that is just such a need. It's an incredible need out there, and we just need to be able to open those doors to have them walk through and tell us what's going on so we can know how to help.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely relationship building is key in, eventually being able to help the person on multiple levels other than for the initial reason in which they showed up.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, things unfold.
Yeah.
So what kind of things did you come across? Was it more of a physical needs that they had, resources, mental health, or all of it?
A lot of it was mental health. A lot of it was how they were feeling. But it was mostly because of what was going on at home with sometimes DV or unemployment or that stress of seeing your parents have to work 2 jobs or have to not worry about what to put on the table. That creates a lot of stress for the youth to see the struggle with the parents. So we saw a lot of that. And we also saw for the Latino kids, there is this push and pull with it. It feels like you're in 2 different worlds with your parents still coming with the more Latino culture and expectations and rules and the newer kids growing up in the Americanized style and things are very different. And so there was a lot of disconnect. And so that they lack that connection with the parents because they weren't communicating well. So we saw quite a bit of that as well.
For the promotoras that are part of your team, is there an average length of stay that they're with you, or do you see high turnover in those roles?
No, they stay.
They're with you for the long haul.
Yeah, they stay. And, sometimes not at the same level of connection. They're not able to participate in everything, but they always consider themselves promotores, and they always will come back. Or when we have some of the events, they'll be there. And they'll always tell me, when you need something, call me because I'll be there. And so this is something that it's a passion for them.
And I think you spoke to that earlier, Tanisa, about because you see them and how empowering that is to a woman of color when they are seen and valued for their expertise and their knowledge. And thinking if you've got immigrant women maybe that are new and who maybe feel like I don't know the language so well and so then I'm not equipped, but to create an opportunity for them where they do feel like, no, you know what, I can do this and I can master these skills and what that does for them. And that's why I was intrigued about what that meant also for their daughters because of the impact, because we know that connection that daughters have with their moms is extremely critical. And sometimes in my work with young Latinas, what I would see is if they didn't see their mom as a force to be reckoned with, they almost looked at her as weak for staying in a certain relationship or for not being able to leave the home for work. And they didn't understand the full picture of maybe why she was in that situation. And so that's why I was curious about what that looked like. So I appreciate the work that you do with them because it's so much more than just the health aspect. It's like there's a multifaceted model that you're describing to us, but so much of it is for these women to stay connected with you for the long term. It's because they've latched on and now are committed. And that just warms my heart because I feel like they must get so much more from it personally too. Not that with the community isn't receiving a great benefit, but as a woman also still developing and is still on a journey, that's huge on so many levels. So I just
agree.
really appreciate and love that about this model.
Yeah. You know, it kind of shows you could change your life in large and small ways.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. And it gives value to your story. And oftentimes, if you don't have a certain degree or a certification or, you know, letters behind your name, people don't think that you're educated enough to do a certain thing. But life experience in itself is the education that you need in order to, you know, just start you on the path of where you're going to go. And a lot of people overlook that if you don't have the certain, you know, A, B, or C.
Yeah, it's kind of a confusion with being intelligent and being educated.
Yes.
Those are two different things, right? So, you know, where do the intelligent, uneducated people go to express their skill set, right? You know, and I'm finding like society is changing a bit with that. Like the credentials and the degrees are becoming less important. You know, I just recently read this article that said 50% of the jobs posted on IBM's site don't require a degree, right? So the question is becoming in the workforce, can you do the job?
Right.
Which it should have been in the first place.
Yeah.
Because there's plenty of people we've worked with
That have the degrees. And they're,
and you think you have no business working here with children.
Right. Yeah. Go to the lunchroom, please.
It just tells me you finished school. You finished the program.
Yeah. You know, and there's really a difference between that, right?
And that is truly one of the arguments we have when we look at the promotores model and the work that we do with organizations to develop the model is about how the true intent of the model is to be community-based, to be from the community, have a close understanding of the community, and reflect the community. And sometimes I call it abuse of the model. We see organizations that are hiring, bachelor's degree or master's preferred, and for the work that they're going to do, that is not required. That is required for someone who's going to do a different work, and it's always valued. I mean, I value education extremely, but I also feel that this is intended to be a model that reaches the community, and that's what you want. Someone who can do the job, who will understand when that woman's walking away from that table, will understand what needs to be done, rather than sit back behind the table and just do the things that your organization say. Go do outreach.
Right.
Well, outreach is not sitting at a table and waiting for people to come to you.
Right.
That's why you're out to reach, right?
Yeah.
So we talk to organizations a lot, and I always say we have to learn to use the model the way it was intended.
Yeah. I remember seeing a job description at an entity that shall remain nameless, but it required a master's to teach breastfeeding to community members. And I was like, what? Like,
That's exactly what I mean.
I mean, it was crazy. And it was so unnecessary barriers. And, when I see job descriptions like that, I also think about who is not reaching.
You should have asked, have you breastfed?
Yeah.
Honestly, it's like,
Right.
well, because sometimes I think the way that they frame that, it's almost like it's discounting that lived experience, and it's not giving or even recognizing any type of credit that is knowledge that they bring to the table that you can't replicate in certain credential programs or you just can't. You actually have to get in there and do it, and that has value. So I'm just curious. The model sounds great, and there's a lot of strides that you all have made. What would take it to this next level? Like, if you just thought we just want to blow it out of the water even more, what could we do differently or better to just keep that growth going?
Well, I would say that every nonprofit and healthcare organization should have promotores on staff. And should use the model as it's intended to really reach the community that it's the difficult to connect and really understand, get out there. Schools can have a promotor who is there to talk to the parents, the kids, to connect them to services. And so I think that we're already making a lot of strides with the county-based training that will be free for everyone and really touches on the core competencies. And then the state is also moving towards that. We are starting a statewide association of community health workers as well, and I'm doing some binational work with community health workers, promotores. So I think it's ripe. It's ready. It's there. It's a beautiful, beautiful model.
Yeah, nice.
Wow. Well, last question for you before we wrap up. So when you think back to the projects of San Bernardino, what would you say to that version of Margarita?
I read that question in so many things that I read, but I've never asked myself, what would you tell your 11-year-old self? I would say hang in there, and it's going to be better, and you can do it. You can do something different. And just trust that you can.
Yeah.
I think that's what I needed. I needed to know that there was something different out there for me.
And what a difference you have made for the promotoras and the communities in which they're serving and the younger generations that now are impacted by them. So it's this ripple effect that you've had. So thank you for joining us and for what you do.
Thank you.
And just the passion that you have for being a public servant is humbling. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
For joining
Thank
us.
you for inviting me.
This podcast is made possible by the California Commission on the Status of Women and Girls. Additional sponsors include San Diego County Employees Charitable Organization. You can access all episodes and connect with us via email at allaboutgirlsofcolor.com.